It's been a long time coming. Always cute and fierce. No! It's been a long time coming for me to finally be able to say, for real, full spoilers for the entire Xeno series. Let's talk about the Zohar. This is not going to be a video explaining the origins of the different Zohars in-universe, or all the references tied up in that. That's definitely for another time, probably 2 other times really, but purely about the powers of the Zohar and how they work, plus the ways they're controlled, and the outcome. It obviously differs in appearance and precise function from game to game, but we're given ample hints to suggest that the actual powers work more or less the same in each incarnation. The vast majority of this information comes from Xenogears' perfect works though, so the gear segment is going to be by far the longest. It's here that the 2 primary abilities of the Zohar are named and explained in the most detail. The first is really simple. It can output an infinite amount of energy. In Gears, this is a result of the fact that the wave existence became trapped in the Zohar modifier, which was in and of itself Deus's power source, so really strong, just not infinite, but then a higher dimensional entity got stuck in it, so then it kinda became infinite because it was intrinsically tied to the higher dimension in which the wave existence resides. It's also capable of beaming some of this energy directly to devices known as slave generators, which are capable of sending a request to the Zohar when they run low on energy, and then the Zohar will supply them with exactly the right amount of energy needed, with no chance of overloading. These devices are present in every single gear on the planet except for Xenogears itself, and the wave existence leaving at the end of the game is what prevents other gears from functioning. It's sort of unclear where the Animo relics fall into play in all of this, but they are described as pseudo-Zohars and can greatly power up a gear when aligned with the proper human, so it seems like they provide some sort of third pillar in the energy relationship between Zohar and Slave Generator that allows for much greater energy output, while also seeming to contain some sort of technological information that can evolve a standard gear into something much more advanced. And believe it or not, this is actually the least powerful thing the Zohar can do, but in order to explain the other big function, we will have to get a little quantum up in this house. Now, I did finish my first quantum mechanics class recently, so I think I actually understand what's going on now, but since I don't want to have to explain Dirac notation and Hermitian operators in a YouTube video about a series of niche JRPGs where you punch God with giant robots, and the only way to read perfect works in my native language is via a very literal translation from Japanese, I'm going to skip over the nitty-gritty. Basically, because everything can be described as a wave, everything can also be described as a distribution of probabilities of being in a certain state of being that collapses to one value when observed. Also, the uncertainty principle exists, so even when we do observe, it's impossible to know everything about an object or system to a perfectly precise degree. When you scale things up to the sizes we encounter in everyday life, the quantum weirdness is so small in comparison to non-quantum phenomena, it doesn't really affect anything we can perceive with our human senses, so in all but the really special cases that only physicists care about for the most part, the universe can be described by classical physics give or take a relativity, so Newton wasn't really wrong, he just discovered approximations of how the universe actually works that are so good we didn't even realize they weren't exact until we learned that quarks and the degenerate energy eigenstates of the Hamiltonian are things. At any rate, the Zohar is able to take advantage of that quantum wackiness and use it to greatly help out those who are connected to it. This ability is known as Phenomenon Phase Shift. In what is legitimately the simplest way I can explain it, the Zohar is capable of receiving requests from people who are compatible with it. When these people have a desire for something, it will read the probabilities of every possible outcome of the situation. This basically gives it a roadmap of possible futures and the probability of each one. It will then latch onto the potential event that's closest to the desired outcome and somehow manipulates the probabilities of every single other event so that they're forced to zero and the desired one is the only possible outcome. Now, for most things, changing one specific event isn't going to be enough to guarantee a specific future happens, so it basically then goes down the timeline in little increments and adjusts the probabilities of events so that when it's done, it's gathered a set of probabilities, each of which governs one step in a process that, when put together, will guarantee the desired outcome will happen. It then takes these probabilities and inserts them all back at the instant in time where setting this whole chain into motion will work. The end result is basically overwriting the quote-unquote original future, as described by the normal set of probabilities from the usual reality, with a set of probabilities that guarantee the desired result occurs. And yes, this should start ringing a bunch of bells for Xenoblade fans. The last thing to talk about is Ether. In the Gears universe, and that universe alone, the Zohar is also the direct source of everyone's Ether abilities, which, other than that, basically work like any other anime magic. Ether is in reality superhuman abilities bestowed to people with an innate connection to the Zohar by the phenomenon phase shift. For Ether to occur, the Zohar must be activated by strong willpower. One manifestation of the phase shift is the Zohar basically saying, you know, if you had superpowers, you would be more likely to achieve your desired outcome in things, and then giving the people the superpowers. The stronger the connection, the greater the Ether potential you have. Every special ability in Gears, except maybe Choo-Choo's, is just extremely limited, extremely specialized reality warping. If you want a different explanation of this that's a bit less well translated from Japanese, because, again, the Perfect Works translation, while a fantastic piece of work that seems to have been done by one person, and I'm glad it exists, it does get really Englishy and complicated. There are a bunch of comics in Perfect Works that sorta visualize the different phenomenon I described here with a cutesy comic style that I'm also glad exists, just because there's a bunch of cute Faye and Ellie drawings, and my favorite thing is the way it explained the Zohar going through time and manipulating phenomenon is by it literally playing foosball with the universe. I can't make this shit up. It is amazing. You need to look this up just for that. Anyway, moving on to Xenosaga, the Zohar is less of an actual physical object and more of an abstract thing that isn't really physically there and is only perceived by us in that appearance it has because of a lot of other really complex stuff. But what it actually is pretty simple. It is a link to a higher dimension and a way to contact the higher dimensional being from that higher dimension known as Udu. It is once again a source of infinite energy. Basically, it draws upon energy from Udu's dimension, and because of dimensional stuff, that's effectively infinite for us. And Zohar emulators can be made. They are explicitly less powerful than the original, so it's unsure if what they do is siphon smaller amounts of energy from the upper domain, or if they're just powerful generators of energy that have similar wave-like and Udu-like properties to the original Zohar. The anima is also a completely different thing this time, so it's not really tied directly into the Zohar. It's capable of controlling it, as seen in the game, but it's not directly connected to it. Like, the Vessels of Anima and the Zohar emulators are different things in this universe. It does, however, seem like the phenomenon phase shift does exist. Kos-mos is confirmed to get her power from the original Zohar, and that's how she's capable of functioning how she does. And when Mary, who, again, is connected intrinsically to the Zohar, awakens in episode 1, this is the scene where she annihilates the huge Gnosis fleet, the Durandal has an error involving it picking up requests that are being made to all the Zohar emulators it's been storing. So it seems like even the emulators can phase shift, probably to a smaller degree since she had to call on all of them. Let's just touch on Xenoblade X really quickly before we do 1 and 2, because this is the only Xeno universe with no official Zohar yet, but again, we've only gotten one X game so far, it's probably still out there. There are, however, references to both the Gears and Saga Zohar ones in shape, and a powerful biocomputer, fairly similar to the Katamoni from Gears, also exists in the Lifehold core. In addition, the phenomenon described by everyone when they're first trapped on Mira is a lot like a space-time anomaly event from Xenosaga, so I wouldn't be surprised if some infinite energy or higher dimension or weird wave stuff device does exist. And then lastly, we have Xenoblade 1 and 2. As of now, Definitive Edition is not out yet, so any involvement in 1 is a retcon from 2, but it all makes a very surprising amount of sense. This time, the Zohar is known in-universe as the Conduit, although it is the same thing, and it's described as a meta-universe manifold. This is basically a really funky way of saying, yeah, it's like the Xenosaga one. It's a thing that can connect universes to each other, and manifold is just kind of a topological thing, so this basically means it's a thing that connects universes. Like, this probably isn't the true form of the Zohar. I don't think three-dimensional humans are capable of perceiving the Zohar as it truly is, but I guess the manifold thing is the distinction that this Zohar is actually physically there and is not just our perception of something else like in Saga. Anyway, artifices are powered by basically slave generators from Gears, so presumably this Zohar can also do the infinite energy thing. In these universes, ether is not a direct result of any phase shift, but it does seem to be a byproduct of the activation of the conduit. It is a physical substance that allows people who are adept at it to do anime magic, so it's basically a substance that, if you manipulate it, you can sort of do a localized phase shift. The Trinity processor, though, is where things get really interesting, because we have two different examples of characters who are using its power. Shulk uses the Ontos processor, and he can get visions of the future that appear to him condensed within one instant of time, and then allow him to attempt to create a more desirable future by using the information. And then, once he resonates fully with Alvis and gets the true Monado, the Monado 3, what I'm assuming is the utmost of Alvis's power, he is asked what he desires by Alvis himself, and then is given the power to achieve that, both to destroy Zanza and to change the state of the world on a massive scale. And then, Rex has the Numa Core and can also do some stuff. With just Mithra, he can use Foresight to predict the movement of enemies, and then counter to provide a more desirable future for him, as in not dying, based on that. In the true Numa form, she is described as being able to, quote, make anything she imagines real, unquote, which is represented in gameplay as being able to change her ether powers on the fly to swap to any of the 8 elements, and in story as being able to power up Rex to perform feats he couldn't do before when under extreme duress. Yet both of those are literally just the phase shift. This Zohar can do the phase shift, at least when combined with the Trinity processor. So, class, what have we learned today? Infinite energy is somehow the least powerful thing the Zohar can do. Kos-mos functions more or less the same as an Aegis does. And Xenoblade 2 is even more of Xenogames the Xenogame than we initially thought. And also, I want to go to bed now. So, yeah, thank you so much for watching as always. Somehow, the Zohar Explained thing ended up being one of the shortest main videos on this channel for a long time, but I guess that's because I didn't go into the in-universe origins or any of the religious references. Like, I'm scared of when I have to go over the Saga Zohar emulators, because apparently they're named after the apostles, but like not from one specific list of the apostles, combining different names from multiple different lists that disagree. Like, I think there's only one James in the emulators, which I think is different than one of the commonly accepted lists that has 2 different Jameses or something. It's gonna be a mess, but it's going to be an interesting mess. It's kind of weird, honestly, how I gravitated so much to the Xeno series when I've, like, never been religious my entire life. It's an experience. But anyway, until next time, this is Luxin, signing off.